So before we get into today's video, we just wanted to mention that Kelly and Julia won't be here today due to circumstances. Next week, they'll be back, don't worry. So enjoy the video. So, hi everyone. Today we're here with Luke. Luke, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Luke Smith. I'm a Formula One journalist. I've been working in the sport for about 8 or 9 years now. I work for Autosport, it's one of the world's biggest motorsport websites. We've got a weekly magazine as well. I also work for the New York Times as well on their special reports in the United States. And I've been a huge F1 fan all my life, basically. And I'm so lucky to work in the sport that I love. And it's great to be on the show with you guys again.
Yeah. So how did you start getting into journalism?
So I think I was around about 8 or 9 years old, I think. And I was talking with a neighbor. Basically, I was a huge football fan and he was a football fan as well. So he was sort of helping me get into football. And at one point, he mentioned how he wished he could have been a football writer and written about sports. And as a little kid, it really blew my mind that you could actually just be paid to watch sports and write about it, and that be your job. So I think from quite an early age, I knew I wanted to be a journalist. And to begin with, so when I was about 15 or 16, a friend of mine, he was running a video games website, and basically he said to me, look, if you want to write about the game, and I'll give you a free copy. And I was really into video games, so for me it was like, okay, it's great, I get a free game and I do some writing and whatever. And he basically showed me a bit of like web design and content creation and things like that, and that got me kind of thinking, well, I could just do that with F1, couldn't I? Like, I can put together the sport that I love the most and my hobby, journalism, that I want to do as a career one day, and kind of put the two together. So I did that, and basically I spent, it was 2012, it was a good sort of solid year just writing basically on this little website I set up. And then I had an email one day from NBC in the United States, and they said basically that they were getting the F1 TV rights and they were doing a website to go with it, and would I be interested? And I was like 17 years old, and I was just like, wow, okay, and I couldn't believe it, but I was like absolutely well up for it. And I joined them, and I spent a wonderful 5 years with NBC, which was really, really good. And then after that, so that was from 2013 to 2017. And then from 2017 to 2020, I worked with Crash.net, who is a brilliant website. I love my time with Crash. It was great. And that was like my first proper step into the paddock, like being at most of the races and really sort of embedding myself in the media. And then, at the end of the 2019 season, Autosport gave me a call, and they said, we've got a position and we'd like you to come and fill it. And I was more than happy to do that, because it was always the magazine I would read when I was a kid. And I remember my mum, for Christmas, she'd always get me like the Christmas special of Autosport in my Christmas stocking. So to be able to finally sort of read that magazine was really, really special, and to write in it is amazing. So that's really my sort of story about how I got into journalism and what I've been doing really for the past sort of 8 years or so.
It's a really inspiring one, to be honest. So have you always been interested in Formula One?
So I think when I was about, it must have been 9 or 10. So one day it was a very rainy Sunday, I remember it, and I was just flicking the channels on the TV, and I came across the F1. I think it was the Brazilian Grand Prix, and it was where Fernando Alonso won his first F1 world title. And I was watching it, and I remember at the start there was this huge crash, and obviously when you don't know about it, you kind of go, wow, that's amazing. That really caught my attention. And then I spoke to my mum about it, and she said to me, oh, I used to love Formula One. She said, I used to watch F1 all the time. And she said, I used to go to the British Grand Prix and I would support this driver called Gilles Villeneuve. And me being 9 years old, I was like, well, Gilles a girl's name. Like, girls don't race cars. Like, well, how does that work? And then found out that it was actually a male name, and of course that women do race cars and do race them very well. That really sort of got the ball rolling basically for me with F1, and it was something that I really shared with my mum, and that was a really wonderful thing. And we would go to sort of local track days, and we would go to like touring cars and Formula 2 and things like that at some of the local UK circuits. And that really just stoked my passion for F1, and it got to the point where I never missed a race. place that on weekends my friends will call me up and be like, "Oh, we're going down the park. Do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "The F1's on. Sorry, I've got to watch that instead." And I remember one time we were having like a sleepover or something at a friend's place. And it was like 6 a.m, but it was the Chinese Grand Prix. And I was like, well, I've got to watch this. And I've taken my laptop and I sort of opened it up and I was sat there watching it. And all of my friends were like, "Dude, what are you doing? It's 6 a.m. And I was like, but the F1's on. I've got to watch it." So yeah, I think the obsession's always been there. And to have been able to end up working in the sport is just, a real dream come true, I must say, because it's always been my real passion.
Yeah, I think it's very nice to hear that it was because of your mom that you got into the sport, because like it's a bit different than the stereotypical story, because most times it's because of the dad or the male in the house that you like get into the sport. And also like the story with Jill, you thought that it was a woman. There have been like not a lot of women in sport. Do you think that there's a lack of female reporters and journalists within the motorsport industry?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely do think that. And I think that in the past sort of 8 or 9 years or so, when I've been working in F1, I've not seen the big change that I perhaps would have expected, to be honest. I mean, you look in the media center at the moment, and there are very few women full-time writing about F1. I think in the English language, I think there's only one journalist who works for the Times. So I think she's the only English language full-time female journalist in the media center, which is silly because it is such a male-dominated, and it's such a it's such a male-dominated industry, and it's something that really does need to change. And I think it's just about the perceptions that people have got, and about realizing that there's actually an issue here that does need to be changing, and that you look at the media center and it's not representative of the wider world. It's not very diverse. It's not very sort of equal gender. And I remember I was talking to one journalist at Silverstone last year, and it was when we were talking about lots of sort of the Black Lives Matter movement and all of F1's We Race As One sort of program and things like that. And I said to him about the need sort of for more inclusivity and things like that. And he turned to me and he was like, "Oh," he said, "look around." He said, "There's a very diverse F1 paddock. There's no issue." And I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He was being serious. And I looked around in the media center, and every other person in that room was white and male. And I was just thinking, how can you think that? And it's those kind of sort of perceptions that we need to challenge, and still say there is more we need to do. We do need to get more women sort of working on the reporting side. And I know there's lots working on the sort of TV side and who do an absolutely fantastic job. But on the sort of like more, I guess, traditional written media side of things, you look around that media center and it is so male dominated. And that's something that I really do hope does change in the years to come, because it's, as I said, not representative of sort of wider society and the world as a whole.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because as well, like F1 has a lot of campaigns to bring more diversity in the sport, but it's not always being represented in the media side. How do you feel like you as a reporter have any influence on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that anyone with a voice, I think you have to try and use that. And I think that I've always been very interested in sort of like more people coming and enjoying the sport that we all love and that we all find so fascinating, and basically making it a more sort of, as I said, sort of representative of the wider world. And when I was working with Crash, for example, we had points where we were looking for freelancers, just to cover a few races for us here and there. And I was really always, and sorry, I'll try and word this better. They had sort of people in mind, basically, and they were all men. And I was like, well, actually, what about this person or this person? And in the end, it was that I think the first 2 freelancers that I had sort of a help in hiring were both women. And I felt really, really proud of that, because it's like, that's a really cool step to sort of help sort of, make it more diverse and make it more sort of gender equal. And I think it is something that, we are starting to see. I think there is a change coming, and it's great. And I mean, I get emails probably once a week or once every 2 weeks from people saying, I would love to be an F1 journalist. What advice do you have? What can I do? And I would say in the past year or so, I've probably received more emails from women than I have from men asking that question. And that is such a cool sign. That is such a great sign of where things are going. And I hope that it sort of means that in sort of 10, 15 years time, that we can look at the media centre and it's 50-50 and there's a lot more female representation in there. But yeah, I think there is that change coming. I mean, even within Autosport, when I joined, it was basically an all male staff, full timers basically. But we had our first female member of staff, Megan, join earlier this year, and it's just been absolutely fantastic. And that's sort of just really cool to see. And it would always be that on our sort of communications channels on Microsoft Teams, I would be like, like morning boys or morning lads, and now I'm like, I can't say that anymore. And that's really good though, because it shouldn't be like that. It should be that we've got more female involvement, more female representation. And I just really hope that, similar to how some of the journalists who are older sort of working in F1 now, I remember emailing when I was sort of 13, 14, being like, I want to be a journalist. I really hope that in, say, 10 years time, there's lots of people who did that with me, and I can sort of think, okay, yeah, I remember you emailed me when you were young and you were starting out, and it's great to see sort of people making that step. So yeah, there are definitely encouraging signs though that the change is coming.
As you said, F1 does a lot for like Black Lives Matter movements, and you as journalists try to fight equality as well. Do you think the sport does enough to fight the injustices within gender roles?
I think there's always work to be done. I think definitely. I think on the gender side, I think that it's very, very good to see there are a lot of very high profile roles in F1 that are women, basically. I mean, the head of marketing, Ellie Norman, who does a phenomenal job. You've got Chloe Target Adams, who's the head of race promotions for F1, and again does an absolutely phenomenal job. And it's really great to see that. And I think that if we maybe saw them being a bit more sort of public faces, and I know they've got very, very busy jobs, and their job, I guess, isn't to sort of be known, it's sort of to get everything going on behind the scenes. But if we maybe did hear a bit more from them, which I think we have in the past couple of years, I think that would be a really good step. But yeah, you look at sort of within teams, like the number of women who are taking like very important engineering roles and strategic roles. It's encouraging to see that sort of change is happening now, and it's not like it's questioned. It's just like, okay, well, they're here to do the job, and it doesn't matter what the gender is. So basically, so long as they do the job and can do it to the best of their ability, that's the main thing. So I think there has been a nice sort of positive momentum growing on that side in F1, and I think that hopefully it just continues in the years to come, because I think today is Women in Engineering Day or something like that, and that's been really great to see. All the teams, I think Williams, McLaren in particular, I've seen Red Bull as well, doing posts about that and highlighting the fantastic women that work within their team and the jobs they're doing. And I think that's just really cool. I think it's great that we're sort of seeing that, and seeing sort of badass women coming to the forefront, and it's great.
Yeah, I think it's also, as fans, really nice to see, because it gives you sort of like, I do fit in within a community.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was younger and I used to go out and say like, oh, but I love F1 or I love motorsport, people used to be like, but no, you're a girl, you wear dresses, you can't love it. But now you're like, no, I can. And I can even work in it if I want to. And I can see other people working it. And I have like someone to look up to in a way. I think that's really nice to see also for young girls.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully we can have that on the sort of on the media side as well, because I mean, I can't relate to that at all, because I would have looked at F1 journalists growing up, and I'd been like, well, they're all like me. They're all white, they're all male. So I can fit in very easily. But if you're a woman coming to the table, it might be quite intimidating, because you might not see sort of prominent women in the media, for example. But hopefully that can change. Hopefully it can be that. And I know you guys have interviewed people like Laura Winter, for example, and fantastic women in the field. And the more women we get involved, the more they'll inspire, the more that we'll see young girls looking up to women in F1 in the media and be like, okay, I can do that too, as you say. And it just sort of keeps snowballing and growing until basically it's no longer a question anymore, which would be a wonderful place to get to.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So a bit more about Formula One, because obviously we've had some really exciting races. The last one was crazy, if you ask me.
Yeah.
What have you thought? What are your thoughts on like what has happened in the past few races already?
It's been phenomenal. It's been fantastic. I mean, Paul Ricard is a track that I think we all saw coming up and like, oh, for God's sake, here we go.
Yes.
And we didn't expect anything.
Oh.
And yet it produces one of the best races of the season. And I think that it's just amazing that for the first time in well, very, very long time, we've got a proper battle between two drivers, two teams. And that's something that, again, when I was younger, growing up watching F1, that was every single year. Like it was okay, Schumacher versus Alonso, and then Alonso, Hamilton, and Kimi, and then Massa and Hamilton, and then Button and Vettel, and it was great. And we've kind of lost that spark in recent years because Mercedes have been so dominant, and that's full credit to them for the job they're doing, and ultimately on their rivals to have sort of stepped up more. But I think this season that things have worked out where, yeah, Red Bull have made that big step. I think Max now has everything he needs to be a world champion, which is fantastic. And I think he's really pushing Lewis and Mercedes, but I think they also really enjoy that as well because they kind of get this sort of good energy off the sort of threat that they're facing and the pressure they're under. Yeah, and it's just great. And I really hope that we see a title race sort of go down to the wire because we've seen so many new fans and so many sort of younger fans get on board in the past sort of 3-4 years. And obviously Drive to Survive has played such a huge role in that. And they've never seen a title decider. And it's just like, that's really what we want. Like I remember 2016, 2014, and those races where you're just on the edge of your seat, like it's the last lap and we still don't know for sure who's going to win the title.
Yeah.
And the way it's going, I think we're going to get that, which would be really, really exciting. So yeah, it's been a great start to the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say new fans are spoiled this year.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
If this is your first season watching F1, you've really, really locked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had a friend of mine who just started watching F1 and she texted me like after the race at Paul Ricard. She was like, I really did pick the right year to come into F1, didn't I? And I was like, yeah, you got a right one, yeah.
Because if you'd have watched Paul Ricard in 2018, 2019,
yeah,
you'd probably be like, oh, I don't get this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch.
Yeah, if that would have been your first race, then you probably wouldn't have continued to watch because they never were the good ones. So as we've said, Paul Ricard never was a track that was considered as one of the best. But what do you consider as one of the best, or maybe your favorite tracks of the calendar?
I think every track has something, and every race, particularly sort of like traveling there and being there, every single race has something that you can really pick out as being something you enjoy or love. And yeah, but I think the ones that really stand out for me, I mean, Spa is just legendary. It's amazing. And I used to go there twice a year. I go there for the F1, but also for the World Endurance Championship race as well, because I just loved it that much. And it's just an amazing track. I've been lucky enough to run around it a couple of times as well. And it's just such a cool place to be. There's so much history there. And it's just unlike anything you see elsewhere nowadays. I think it's just got everything about it. So Spa is definitely one of my favorites. Suzuka as well, I absolutely love. I just think it's for the drivers, I think it's such a punishing track in that if you do make the slightest error and go that little bit wide, you'll pay the price and you will run off track and hit the grass or hit the gravel or whatever. So I think that's really cool. But it's also, again, really high speed, really exciting. The Japanese fans as well are just absolutely amazing. They come with all these sort of crazy costumes and hats and everything. And I really hope that whenever sort of the world is safe enough that we can have full fans back at races and hopefully get to Japan sort of later this year, that we can have that again, because that is so important to the atmosphere. So yeah, Spa, Suzuka. I think Silverstone I kind of have to say because it's my home race, and I used to be a bit like, oh, Silverstone's a bit rubbish, but I've kind of as I've got older sort of grown to love it a bit more and sort of become very proud of my home race, which is nice. Yeah, they're cool. Singapore as well, just mega night race. I could do this probably about every single track, but I'll say Spa and Suzuka are my top two.
Yeah, like you also said, like they're allowing fans back at the stadiums. It's really nice. Like with the last race when Max overtook Lewis, you could hear the fans cheer. It made me feel like, oh, it's starting again. Like the sport is starting again. Everything's going back. We are also 7 races in this season. What has been your favorite this year?
Ooh, wow. Okay. There's been so many good ones. That's the thing.
Yeah.
If it was last year or the year before, you'd be like, okay, well, what was the one good one out of the 7 we've
Yeah.
had? But man. I think I'm going to say Baku, and I think just because of how crazy that final 2-lap sprint was, and it was a pretty exciting race. Like obviously having Leclerc starting on pole, and then Hamilton and Verstappen and Perez sort of all duking out at the front, and then once the 2 Red Bulls got to the front, you were kind of like, okay, well that's settled, like that's it, and whatever. And then obviously we had the tyre failures, which was amazing that everyone walked away unharmed. That was obviously the most important thing. But when that happened so close to the end, I was kind of like, okay, well, that'll be it then. Like, there's red flag, race over, that's the result. And then when they said, oh, no, we're going to do a 2-lap sprint, I was just like, oh, this could be crazy. And it exceeded all my expectations. Like, it was just going off. You saw, obviously, Lewis going off, and then Alonso charging through, and then Vettel on the podium. And it was a real freak result. And I love races like that, like last year when Gasly won at Monza. It's just seeing someone totally random on the podium, and you kind of, how on earth did that happen? Yeah, so I would say Baku's probably been my favorite this year.
Yeah, I get that, honestly.
Yes.
Also, I did not expect it would start again for those 2 laps.
No,
like,
same.
Well, we got our end.
Yeah.
But it gave us a lot.
Definitely.
So, rounding up, is there any advice you would give our listeners who wants to work or make a career in the F1 world?
Sure. Well, I think that an obvious one is you got to work hard because you do. It is a very competitive environment, and there are lots of people who want to sort of work within F1 and be doing jobs. And I think that really the important thing is just to work hard and to be resilient. I think you sort of have to grow, sort of get quite tough and sort of deal with setbacks and deal with sort of things that happen that are maybe not so good. And I had a lot of that through my career. I had moments where I was just like, well, I'm not going to be an F1 writer then. Like, it's just not going to happen. But you sort of have to be resilient. I think you sort of have to trust the process, like to know that, okay, I'm putting in the work. I've got to just know that these things maybe take a bit of time, but know that you will get there at the end. Because I think, if you back yourself, if you sort of try and open the right doors and just be very open yourself as well, I think that you've got to just try and talk to as many people as you can. Be kind. I think that's a very easy one and a good rule for life. But I think that it's a good way to sort of get to know people and just to sort of be very open-minded, because it is competitive, but also it's not sort of cutthroat where you've got to be like really ruthless and really mean to people just to get ahead, because that doesn't work. So I think those are the important ones. I think that, and just to be passionate, that's really the most important thing. I think that, and I've always said, because I don't have any journalism qualifications at all. I did history at university, and my friends would be like, well, why did you do history? Like, what was the point of that? And I said, basically, if I get to a point where I wake up in 10, 15, 20 years time and be like, I'm not passionate about this anymore, I don't want to do this, I want something else to be able to go and do. So I've got a degree sort of in my back pocket, basically. Because if you're not passionate, there's not really any point in doing it. You've got to put your heart into it. But I mean, I say this every day, like I fall more and more in love with my job every day, more and more in love with the sport every single day. And I don't see myself ever getting to that point, really. So I think it's important I think that's important. So I would say work hard, be resilient, be open-minded, and keep the passion. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. I think the fact, there
we go.
I was gonna say, like, the fact that you mentioned your degree, it's really funny because, like, I'm not studying anything that would have to do with Formula One, but I still want to work there. Like you said, you got something to fall back on if you ever lose the interest. And I think a degree isn't always the answer, especially in the current world of social media and everything.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think that's probably another really good bit of advice as well, is there's not one right way to do things. Like I remember when I was younger and I was sort of starting out, I was told by a few people that there was a certain way to become an F1 journalist. And I went completely off that basically. I just sort of did my own thing. I made so many mistakes. Like honestly, it was trial and error right the way through. But I kind of like, okay, I learned from that, and yeah, that's one way to do it. And I was open-minded, and I threw myself into things like I went and covered like Formula E. I did lots of WEC as well, and I spent like a good sort of 2-year stint where I wasn't at any F1 races, but I was doing these other championships. And then once I was sort of more present at F1, I had all of these contacts and knew all of this stuff from the other series that actually really helped in F1 as well. So I think, yeah, that's a good just a good way to look at it. Like, you don't need to think, okay, to become a journalist, I must do a journalism degree. I must then go and write about this series and then this one and work my way to F1. There's no one right way to do things. I think, yeah, as long as you're passionate and just trust the process, because it will pay off and it will get there in the end.
I think that's some great advice, honestly.
Yeah.
So thank you, Luke, for joining us today. And thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you follow our social media, as everything is linked in the description box below. And we'll see you again next time.